So thank you for joining me today for our webinar. What we're going to cover today is how to get into solar operations and maintenance. So this webinar assumes that you are already in the solar PV industry. You're probably an installation team or the owner of an installation company. So what I'm going to go over today is how we can transfer some of those skills and how we can use your existing resources to move more, not away from installations, but to add operations and maintenance as another revenue stream into your business. We'll cover the PV system lifecycle and the industry lifecycle. We'll cover lots of interesting techniques and suggestions on other renewable technologies we can get into. And of course, we'll cover some of the electrical test and safety tools that Seaward offers that can help you get into this market, and that are some of the most commonly used tools in the solar PV industry today. Just to talk a little bit about our webinar series, Seaward Solar and Seaward Group as a whole, we offer a lot of educational content. If you're watching this video in the future on our YouTube channel, you can also find 2 or 3 other webinars we have uploaded. If you're here now live in the webinar, I would suggest joining the or subscribing to our YouTube channel, and you'll also find a lot of good content there. And as an electrician, you may have other interests, so we do offer a lot of other electrical test equipment that you might be interested in. So a little bit about myself. My name is Michael Middlemast. I head up the solar category here at Seaward. What that basically means is I'm quite heavily involved in the product development, but also how we present the products. I do technical support, both low level and high level. I deal a lot with our sales and our marketing strategy, but also from a personal perspective, I'm quite invested in solar PV. I've been in the industry nearly 11 years now. I was first in a wholesale business, and we would put kits together for installers, me and my team. And then I moved on to a racking manufacturer, doing work all across Europe as the European sales manager. I then worked for Zeva Solar, who are an inverter manufacturer and part of the SMA group, and I was looking after their UK operation. And then finally, I joined Seaward around 2 years ago, and I helped develop our PV 200, 210, and also I helped to develop the Solar Utility Pro, which was really one of the first projects I really got my teeth into. So from my perspective, I travel a lot. I see a lot of sites. I see a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people. I'm in this industry day in, day out. And not just locally here in Florida. You know, I travel all over the United States. And also I visited sites in the Middle East, in Europe, in India, in China even. So I do have a lot of international experience. And what I've done today with this webinar, I've boiled a lot of that experience down. And this webinar really is not a technical webinar. So we're not going to cover a lot of the nuances of the test procedures themselves. What we're going to cover is how we as commercial people can promote those tests and services. If you do require a more technical, detailed webinar, as I say, we do have those on YouTube. And in fact, in a couple of weeks, we'll be doing one of those live as well. So first of all, what I would like to talk about is really my take on what the PV industry and what our market cycle looks like. And this will give us a good idea, and maybe you can put yourself within this image, this graph, and say, okay, well, my industry is here, you know, my market is here. So what we have here is we have the number of installs graphed over time, okay, plotted over time. So generally, I've found in my experience, and this was particularly true in Europe, that when the government, the local government, whoever it may be, the utility, when they introduce a subsidy, that is when we get a real uptake in installations. So previous to the subsidy being introduced, we have very few installs. We have those that are enthusiastic about the technology. Maybe they're very green-minded. Those were the people that were investing in solar and renewable technologies. But really, when a subsidy is introduced, that's when everyone goes, well, hey, I can make some money off this. I can save on my energy bills. Now I'm going to get solar. So what happens is we have this golden period where the number of installs just skyrockets. Okay, and this is the green area, as I put it, in the market. Now, during this period, knowledge is a huge commodity. Now, bear in mind that's going to be important to us later. That in this green section, we have a lot of people that they're maybe traditional journeyman electricians or they've been commercial electricians and they want to get into solar. Okay, so at that point, knowledge is a real commodity because people don't know, how do I spec the panels? How do I spec the inverter? What wind loadings do I need? What's this thing about the fire safety regulations? So there's a lot of questions, and someone with knowledge in this area has a lot of value. So we eventually, for whatever reason, we meet a peak install capacity. So that might be, okay, well, the supply has reached its limit, or maybe there's been an import tariff on the modules or some of the other components. Perhaps the number of installers has peaked out, and there's only so much solar we as an industry can get in. But by this kind of saturation point in the market, okay, knowledge is not a commodity anymore, right? Everyone knows what they need. They know when they need it. They've bought from the same distributor for years. They've negotiated their pricing. They know what they do. They're putting in 3 to 4 installs a week. And I think the majority of us here on the webinar today, that's probably where we are, right? We're at this stage where, yeah, my business is going nice. I'm ticking along and I'm getting a lot of installs in. So what happens eventually is that the government says, okay, well, that's enough of the subsidy now. So what happens is the installs go down. And a prime example of this is my home country, the United Kingdom. So we had a huge gold rush for solar in the early 2010s. And we really saw this massive spike. And that's honestly one of the reasons why I was successful in my wholesale business, was that I could provide a lot of knowledge to these installers that were up and coming. And I thought to myself, the subsidy then dropped off in the UK. So what can we do to kind of get those companies working again? If they're not installing, what can they do to keep their crews busy? What can they do to keep their trucks on the road, right? What can they do to keep the people in the office busy? So with that subsidy digression, we will actually lose a lot of our business. It's just going to happen. You know, the financial model isn't there, the return on investment. So that's really going to be quite difficult. And how do we readjust as a company? And from my personal experience in the United Kingdom, I saw a lot of my, even good friends go out of business because they couldn't adjust. So eventually what will happen is, and please, this is kind of arbitrary, this graph, but the market will then readjust and we will have more installs than we did when there was no subsidy, but we won't have as many when there was the really high subsidy. So the market will readjust. Cost prices of panels have gone down and inverters have gone down. So we can still make a financially justifiable model to the client, to the end user. However, those guys that were in it for a quick buck, they've gone back to doing whatever they did before the gold rush. So if you put yourself now in this blue section, this whole webinar will be discussing, well, what can we do if we're in this blue section, and even if we're in the yellow and we want to prepare for the blue section, right? How can we maintain diversity in our business and add additional revenue streams rather than just installations? So what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at some secondary markets and how we approach those. So before we do that, let's just take a quick look at some data here, and we'll not labor on this. There's a lot of information here, but the big thing about this is if we look at the incentive tax credit that we have here in the USA, if we drop that incentive tax credit down, the number of megawatts in solar deployments is really going to drop. And you can see it might drop from the base case even by 48.2%. So that is in real terms. That is from GTM research, that basically if any administration, Republican or Democrat, messes with the tax credit, then we could see a massive hit to our industry. So I would advise taking a look at GTM research and reading some of the information they have there and learning about the future of your industry. And that'll help you plan when to diversify and when to add in new revenue streams. So let's take a look at some renewable technologies you could maybe diversify into. I'm going to take a look at these one by one, and we're going to discuss the pros and cons of both. So first of all, the most obvious thing, right, is battery storage. So this could be an additional revenue stream, not only for your new installations, but also for your previous installations. So you can go back to those guys and say, hey, would it be good to maybe store some energy during the day when you're working so you can use it on an evening to do all of your activities in the home on the evening? So that's a really good thing we could look at. So the big advantages of this is the battery storage is very much in the news. There are a lot of positive news stories. The consumer is very aware of this technology right now, particularly in the US and particularly in California, where we're seeing a big surge in solar energy storage. The bad news, well, not the bad news, but the disadvantage of diversifying an installation business to a storage business is that you're probably going to have to learn a whole new lot of skills. Okay, we need to know how to mount this very heavy battery pack onto a secure surface. So is that going to be indoors or outdoors? What are the environmental conditions? We're also putting a whole load of lithium ion inside of someone's garage, or maybe in their workroom or the plant room, whatever. Lithium ion, if it's exposed to the bad temperatures, high temperatures, we could have some events. So that's one thing to watch out for. Another technology that people often look to is EV, so electronic vehicles. And I'm really all for electronic vehicles. I think the market is still very much in its infancy, but I think it very much ties in with solar because the person, if we look at the mindset of the person that's going to buy solar, they're the ones that probably tend towards wanting to buy a hybrid or an EV vehicle. So you could diversify your business into EV. Now, the thing about EV as a disadvantage when diversifying from PV installations is that there's also maybe a lot of groundworks you need to do with the technology to install the charge point, right? If they want that out on their drive in front of their garage, you're going to have to dig up the drive. You have to lay the foundations, etc. So this is new skills. And also we need to pick the correct charger for the correct vehicle. We need to make sure that we're not overloading the system with the panels and the charging. Are they doing fast AC charging? Is it trickle charging? So it is another kind of minefield for us to look at, but I think this is a really good one. And the reason I say that is because there are just a wealth of resources out now for EV, and a lot of the manufacturers of EV charge points and equipment, they offer webinars just like we're doing here at Seaward that you can join freely. So the next technology I would like to talk about is solar thermal. Okay, so hot water. We're making hot water from our solar panels. So everyone thinks, well, a solar panel's a solar panel, right? I'm fitting this solar panel. Why can't I fit this water one? Well, it's a whole other different set of skills, right? So your roofers, the guys that are fitting the mounting system, sure enough, they can transfer over, but you're not connecting to the distribution board of the house. You're connecting to the plumbing system of the house. So you're moving from an electrical installation into a hot water and plumbing installation. So whereas on first glance, this technology may seem like definitely I could get into this, it's going to take you a whole other set of skills. You might also find that the boiler or whatever kind of water processing system they have in the home is not applicable for the panels. Also, the solar thermal panels, they're quite hard to transit. Okay, so they're very, it's insulated glass, so I would just be careful with that. I mean, the big advantage is that if someone's interested in saving money on their electricity, then sure enough, they're probably looking to save money on their hot water. Okay, the good thing about this is you don't have to sell this to people that already have solar panels, right? You can sell it to people that don't have any solar panels at all, no electrical solar panels, right? And just say, would you like to save on your hot water? So that could be a new customer base for you also, which you could then cross-sell those customers into solar PV against the solar thermal argument. This is something we're going to get onto a little bit later, but of course there is cleaning that we can do and cleaning contracts. And my opinion is we should really tie this in at the very beginning of the install. Use it as part of your package and, sell it as an upsell to the customer. Give them an idea, give them a good idea of what dirty panels can do to the efficiency, etc., etc., etc. Marlin has a quick comment here about lithium-ion batteries. He says, lithium-ion phosphate signals the end of most, perhaps not all, lithium battery troubles. As an example, that having to learn new things, new skills is a blessing and no way a curse. Marlin, you're absolutely right. Learning new skills is definitely a blessing. I myself always challenge myself to learn new topics. But in the business world, sometimes we need to move fast and we have to pick the right technology that's for us. So I could go all the way through and learn everything about EV charging, and then the incentive for EV charging could change. So if you can bear with me, Marlon, I'm going to cover that in a little bit more detail, and that should become a little bit more apparent in why I'm kind of making that comment. The next technology is perhaps LED lighting. So people that are interested in saving electricity with solar panels, they're going to be interested in saving electricity overall. So you could maybe look at their home and suggest that they could reduce their energy bill even further by installing LED lights all over their home. So again, that's a very up and coming technology, very easy to get into. All you have to do is change a light fixing. You're an electrician, you can do that. Your teams can do that. Very, very easy to get into LED lighting. There are a wealth of LED lighting manufacturers here in the USA. So you can go with the made in the USA kind of approach with that. And of course, there are international organizations and companies that are making LED. And again, it's another industry that has a wealth of information online. Tying into that is energy efficiency surveys. So if you're installing solar panels, again, they're interested in their energy consumption. Why not have a consulting business where you look at their energy usage throughout the day? You're probably doing that anyway prior to installing the panels. So why not do that kind of retrospectively and say, listen, would you like us to come back to your installation and to your home in 12 months' time and see how things have improved? You could do that as a free of charge service, right? And then you can say, oh, well, did you know you could save energy using LED or this or this? And we're going to cover that in a little bit more detail later also. Just going back to our previous slide, I mentioned that knowledge is a huge commodity in this industry, particularly if you're in that green section of the graph, right? If you're in that green section, you really want to get into solar. You see that there's a big business there, but you don't have the knowledge to do it. So if you're in the blue section of the graph, why don't you sell your knowledge to those in the green section? So maybe you're in California, you've been doing installs for many, many years, the market is booming, and then Oregon says, we're going to do solar, or Nevada says we're going to do solar, or Arizona says we're going to do solar. And I know a lot of those states do have solar industries. I'm not saying that, but definitely not as much as California. So you can actually use your knowledge to teach others. And of course, you can charge a fee for that. And then also, if you diversify into a wholesale business, why not sell those products to the people you're teaching? Okay, so it's a kind of nice way to round off your business. The cons of this is training facilities are not easy to set up. the competition for training facilities is quite high. In a lot of states, they offer free training. So just a couple of things to look out for. This is primarily for Europe, where we operate at 240 volts by the grid. These are voltage optimization systems. So basically, they optimize the incoming voltage. So that again is another retrofit technology we can look at. But finally, and the one I think is the easiest for us to get into, and I will justify this to you in the coming slides, is the operations and maintenance. Okay, because this ties everything we've talked about together. Okay, and I'm going to explain that a little bit more. But if you say to the client, hey, look, I have this very professional piece of specific solar PV equipment that I can test your solar panels with, I can make you a report, I can tell you how your energy is using, how your panels are performing, I can test before I clean them, and then after I clean them, tell you the performance drop. I can tell you how much energy during the day you could save if you had battery storage. This is how much we could use towards your EV. All of these things is tied together with a good O&M tool. But how do we get started? The million-dollar question. You have all of the PV installations you ever done on record, right? It's somewhere in your CRM. You have the customer's addresses, you have their contact details, you maybe have their case notes. You've got a wealth of transferable resources. You have trucks, you have equipment, you have people, you have computers, you maybe already have some PV test equipment that you can use. And you have a wealth of transferable skills, okay? You're an electrician. You know how to install a solar panel. You know how to install a distribution board. So just getting back to what I said earlier, you can spend a whole lot of time learning about EV, learning about battery installations, but wouldn't it be easier if we just transferred into one of those technologies where the Venn diagram crosses more over and where we have those transferable skills, right? Let's make it easy for ourselves. Let's not just install solar panels one day and then the next say, okay, today guys, we're installing 200-meter windmills and wind farms. So we need to make sure that we understand which skills we have to transfer, but we do have them. And finally, because here I am at the Seawood Group and we make tools, the equipment and software required for you to diversify your business is accurate, it's user-friendly, it's cost-effective. And again, back to some of the things I mentioned earlier, there is such a wide range of resources available to you, including myself. I work very closely with our users to help them, not only in the technical aspect and the electrical questions, whatever, but really with the commercial aspects of business, because our attitude is if you do well as a solar installation business diversifying into O&M, Seawood does well. So we work together and we want to help you. We want to help the industry. And again, I'm vested in this. So I want to make sure that solar is going to be one of the biggest energy sources for us as a planet as we move forward. So let me see. A couple of things we have to assess before we go headlong into one of these technologies. So first of all, I'd like you to take a look at the market potential, okay? So how many solar installs are in your catchment area already, okay? Do you actually have a record of those previous clients and installations? And also, is there an appetite for your service? Okay, so it's almost like we have to tick every box. So, okay, well, I know that my team and myself, we could definitely install battery storage, but in my local area, in my catchment area, does anyone care about battery storage? Or I know for sure that we could install EV services, okay, EV systems, but does my local area even care about EV? Okay, or do they all like their huge trucks and, those type of vehicles? So you have to pick your battles, and we have to understand what our market potential is. A very important one, this one, is financial feasibility. So is the market large enough to justify your diversification? So you think, okay, well, yeah, I can do this, and I do think there's definitely a demand for battery storage, but is it large enough for me to then go out and pay for the training, stock up on batteries, etc., etc.? Is it going to be large enough that it justifies your financial output and investment in that new revenue stream? Finally, where's the cash going to come from? Okay, so if you're going to diversify into one of these other renewables, where's the money going to come from? Do you need a new source of capital? Does it need to be a new company? Can you integrate it into your own current umbrella of companies? Do you have to divert funds from another part of the business? How are we going to fund this? Okay, so it's all right us having pipe dreams, and I know I'm an entrepreneur myself, right? We like the idea stage, but we don't sometimes like the implementation stage. So let's just take a step back. Do we have the money? Is the market large enough? Do they even care? And do I have a good database of clients to go at? Now, this is a huge one, and this is a little bit back to what Marlon was talking about earlier, and what I mentioned about his comments. The renewable energy sector is just so heavily dependent on subsidies, and I saw that earlier. You saw that earlier in the graph that I show. So if you say, all right, awesome, I've ticked all the boxes, I have a whole new set of capital that I've got to work with, there is a huge demand for my services in my local catchment area. Okay, I know that I can install battery storage. I've done all the research. We're ready to go. You've done all of this. You're just about to launch your marketing campaign, and the local government says, oh, I'm sorry, there's no subsidy anymore. What happens? All of those customers you had said, well, I'm not interested now. I'm not going to make any money. So what you're left with is a very low number of uptake, because those are the people that I mentioned, they're just passionate about the technology. Maybe they're green. But the larger market, they're like, well, I'm not going to make any money. So why the heck should I listen to you? And why should I install battery storage? I'm happy for my panels just to be, as they are. So evaluate your local policy and legislative barriers absolutely to the nth degree. Now, for this, we can look at the Solar Energy Industry Association here in the United States. In California, there is a big association. All over the U.S., there is. In my home country, in England, there is the MCS, which is the Microgeneration Certification Scheme. There is NAPIT. Internationally, there is the International Electromechanical Committee. They do a lot on standards. In India, there is a great wealth of resources. So just make sure that you evaluate your policy and legislative barriers. For me, if you take anything away from this webinar, this slide is it. Because I have seen in many, many markets, the government and the legislative administrations just take the rug beneath an industry's feet. So do be careful with this, guys, because I'd hate to see you invest in a technology and for it to fall flat on its face. One thing we haven't talked about yet, we've talked everything about what we can do as a company, but we should definitely have an eye on the competition, don't you think? So here I'm going to show you some really quick techniques on how we can identify potential competitors. So first of all, really simple, identify your competitors. So maybe, I was just about to say yellow pages. Check Google, right? In your local area, check industry associations, who's listed, and we need to identify who they are. Determine what their goals are. Okay, so are they looking to diversify into the same renewable energy as you? Okay, so if your catchment area, you think, well, my catchment area is large enough for me. Okay, if I was the sole trader in this kind of area, in my catchment area, I could own this space. But then if another guy comes in, that pie gets smaller. And then if another guy comes in, it gets smaller still. So just try to determine which of your competitors are trying to diversify into the renewable or the sector that you're trying to get into. Identify their strategies and tactics. Okay, so are they very ruthless? Yeah, are they going to do things like really undercut the price to gain market share? Are they very ethical and they won't do anything like that? Are they looking to talk to you directly and say, okay, well, we'll cover this area, you cover that area, or whatever it may be? Are they looking to steal your existing customers? So remember, you're going back to your user base and your CRM to see who you've dealt with in the past to try and upsell these technologies. Assess their strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so these guys are really good technically, but they're not very good sales-wise. These guys are a very good sales operation, but they're not very good in other areas. So really try to put yourself in their position and identify where they're strong, where they're weak, and that will help you with your marketing strategy and sales strategy. Estimate their reactivity and hostility. So say you have exhausted your CRM with leads, okay? So now you think, okay, well, I'm going to drive around my area and I'm going to write down the address of every solar panel installation I see that is not mine. Now, if you do that, that's great. You're adding to your contact database and you're going to feed your sales guys some leads. However, those installs are by someone else. So you're actually treading on their territory, and that's why we should also assess them and their strategy, because they might be doing that to you. So if you do that or someone does that to you, how hostile are they going to be? Okay? And what impact is that going to have on your reputation with the consumer? Finally, with all of this, we can determine which area to attack and which area to avoid. So we can do that in terms of which technology we want to introduce. We can do that in terms of which area we want to introduce. So we can do a lot of that. But overall, in all of this, okay, what we can still do is operations and maintenance. And that's why it's key to get your client into the contract when you install the solar panels. Get them tied up for 12 to 24 months, whatever it may be, on a contract to come back and check their panels. So you're tying them in to your business, okay, and your services, and you're tying them in to your sales guys to upsell them into these other technologies that we've talked about. Just please take a minute to take a look at this. So next, we need to discuss a foot in the door, right? So if you do have this contact database of all the installs you've ever done, how do we go back to those clients? What approach could we take? So a little script I used to use in my business was this. So it would go something like this. Good evening, ma'am. This is X Solar. You may remember us. We installed your system a couple of years ago. I'd like to talk to you briefly about the health of your PV system. Did you know there are several factors that could affect its efficiency? And then we can go into offering some services that could lead on to us identifying which technology is best to upsell to this client. So you could say, did you know that I can perform a full physical inspection of your PV array? I can take a look at the roof fixings, the cabling, the integrity, the inverter. I can also do a full electrical inspection of the PV array using an open circuit voltage test, short circuit current test, insulation test, IV curve trace. Using my very handy Seaward PV tester, I can do this for you very quickly, and I can identify issues for you. And you bring with you to the meeting with the client the tool you're going to use. You show it to them, looks very professional, and they see that it can do a very good job. And then finally, we can then offer this energy efficiency survey of the property and its occupants' energy usage. People are more conscious than ever about their energy usage. So we can use this kind of approach to get our foot in the door to upsell clients to other technologies. Now, I like to call this the Solar PV Health Check. Okay, so I think that's a very good way that we can market it, you know, a Solar PV Health Check. So then from there, we need to devise what our packages would be. So not every client is going to want you to check them every 2 months, and not every client is going to want them cleaned every 2 months. So with our O&M package, it's probably good to offer very clear listed services. Okay, we don't want ambiguity here. So we could have a bronze package, just the inspection, silver package, inspection with cleaning. Gold could be something like maybe an extended warranty on the package, or something like that. So you can do a lot of that, and we can tailor that to your business. Okay, so what would you put in a bronze, a silver, in a gold package? So a little bit about cleaning panels. These images on the right-hand side was in the Mohammed Al Bin Raktoum solar farm in the UAE, probably just south of Dubai. This was a 260 megawatt plant that I was on. I was asked to go out there and help the guys with some testing issues that they were having. Straight away, I could see, well, those panels are pretty dirty, guys. So we had them cleaned, So what we can do is we can test the panels prior to cleaning, so before, and then we can test the panels after, and that's using our Seaward equipment. And then we can see in real terms what the difference in performance is, right? You can then equate that to a cash value. So you can say to the client, hey, look, I used my professional test equipment to test your solar panels really accurately. This is what I got when they were dirty. This is what I got when they were clean. Look, this is exactly how much you would save per year, per week, per month, whatever, if you got me to clean them for you. Okay? So cleaning contracts are huge. And also, you don't have to do this yourself, right? This is also doesn't have to be a transferable skill, although it is pretty easy to clean, 16 panels. You could subcontract that out to someone else. So there's lots we can do with regard to cleaning, and it's also something the consumer maybe doesn't have in their mind so much. So that's something that we could use. So just finally, before we get into the Q&A session for today, I'd like to briefly show you some of the Seaward tools available. Our PV150 is our entry-level model. It'll check voltage, current. You can do a mega test, insulation, resistance. It comes with an amp clamp, a current clamp. The 210 is a little bit more advanced. It'll give you IV curve tracing as well as everything the 150 does. It also holds a lot more records, about 1,000. You can use your PV mobile app, which is available for Android devices. And then finally, we have our 1500 volt solution. And this is really for utility scale installations. It's called the Solar Utility Pro. This unit is rated at 1500 volts, 40 amps. So you could test a 30 amp fuse harness with this guy, no problem. It'll check polarity, VOC, ISC, irradiance, temperature, ambient temperature. It really is one of our flagship units in the solar range. And we have around 200 of these in the field in its short time that it's been around. And this is a unit that I worked on very closely to develop with our engineering team. So that's our presentation for today. I hope a lot of it added value, and I hope in the future it can add some value to your business. Please do add me on LinkedIn. I update regularly. I post a lot of informative stuff, both commercial and technical information. And right now I'd like to open the floor to any questions. So Marlon has said, thanks for addressing my comment. I'm glad you thought that was a good answer, Marlon. Thank you very much. And Marlon says, particularly if it's an older system installed without monitoring, they just know about it. They don't know about the performance. That's absolutely right, Marlon. These legacy systems don't have monitoring a lot of the time. So maybe they never knew what their system was producing. Although there is some level of monitoring on the inverter itself. You normally get a summary of the kilowatt hours generated per day or per month, whatever. But you don't really get detailed information. Naveen has asked, is there a way to check the quality of the solar panels before installation? Absolutely. This is kind of getting more into a technical question, Naveen. But basically what we can do is we can measure a single panel, or we can test the whole string at the commissioning level. And what we do is we take that measured data and we transpose it to standard test conditions. Okay, but for that we need the irradiance and the temperature coefficient. So what we do is we compare it to what the manufacturer said they should be producing. And standard test conditions, by the way, is 1,000 watts per meter squared, 25 degrees Celsius. Brian has said, could you email me proof of attendance for the webinar? Absolutely, Brian. We'll make sure that you get your 2 hours there for the continuous education credits. Not a problem. We'll get that done. Naveen said, what seaward equipment is necessary for that? Well, that would be the PV210 probably. I would look at our PV210. The Solar Utility Pro is probably overkill for a residential installation. Brian, I also just seen your first message there saying that Tim Smith works at the same establishment and is sitting in on the webinar. Thank you for joining me, Tim. If you need the credits as well, we can get some proof over to you. Rami has asked, do you recommend any checklist? Yes, I mean, one thing to reference earlier, we talked about the IEC. I would take a look at the IEC 62446 2016. To reiterate that, that's the IEC 62446 2016. So that is basically gives us the standards for safely testing and commissioning solar PV systems. There's a really good checklist there. I have a question here by Mahul. What is the best pitch to upsell storage along with PV for commercial and industrial clients? Mahul, I think right now, if I'm really honest, I'm not sure that the commercial viability is there for commercial and industrial clients, because quite often when we install on, say, like a factory or a warehouse, their energy usage during the day is pretty huge. So mostly all of their generation is used up. They don't need to store it. So I think it might be hard to get the ROI on there. So I think that would be pretty tough. Let me very quickly just explain this, and please excuse my my crude graph here, guys, and my use of MS Paint. Let me just do a quick crude graph. So we call this the bell curve of energy usage, right? So basically, this is like the daytime here down at the bottom, and this is energy usage on the left. So during the middle of the day, energy usage is quite high, right? Sorry, excuse me. During the day, our energy production with our solar panels is quite high, but our energy usage during the day is quite low, right? So this is during the day, okay, when we're at work and we're not using our panels, but the energy use production of our panels is really high here at the top, okay? So, but when we look at a commercial system, their energy usage is very much in line with what the panels are producing. So therefore, for me, the financial model with regard to storage for commercial systems doesn't work out so well. So I hope that very crude explanation made sense. Okay, just getting back to our questions. Dan, good to see you in the webinar, Dan. Thanks for joining us. It's good to see you. He said, is there a range of pricing for O&M per watt or per kilowatt across the US? Dan, there probably is. However, I'm not really I wouldn't want to give you a concrete figure. My understanding is it's like 10 cents per watt, but please don't quote me on that. I think I would need to do some more research on that. Mahul has a follow-up question. It may be complicated as kilowatt hours saving results in the cost of maintaining battery and efficiency. Yeah, exactly, Mahul. That's exactly what we just, what I said about the bell curve of energy production, etc. It doesn't really make sense, I don't think, on an industrial scale. Rami says, is seaward equipment available in Saudi Arabia and Jordan? Absolutely, sir. We have actually a distribution, calibration, and service center based in Dubai. So they're called Aragon. They're a very good partner of ours. They're a seaward accredited calibration lab. So my advice would be to look to them for more details, and I can certainly send you their contact information. So there are no more questions coming through. I hope I managed to answer everyone's questions correctly. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do click that subscribe button. Please do also click the like button. Oh, Rami has one more question. Can we test the inverter? Yes, we can. We can do an operational test using the current clamp that's included with the PV210. So you can measure DC, then the AC side, and you can measure the efficiency between the two. And also because we're getting an irradiance reading at the same time, we're getting context. So indeed, you can test an inverter with our system. But just back to what I was saying, if you are watching on YouTube, please do hit that like button. It means a lot to us. We don't have many subscribers, but we're a very niche channel. But please do subscribe to us for more videos. With regard to costs of any of our instruments, please, I will go back through the comments and we will send you details on pricing and details on the services available. So Justin, I did see that question. We will answer that offline. But for now, I think we have to end the webinar. And again, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining me today. I'd like to thank Ahmed, Brian, Caitlin, Dan, David, Glenn, Jeff, Jonathan, Justin, Marlon, Mahol, Naveen, Nick, Rami, Sean, Sohan, Tim, and Wilson. Thank you all for joining me today. It was a great session for me. Thanks for all of your questions, and I hope to see you again soon.